In this video I'm going to cover the subject of making mistakes. If you're anything like me, you probably don't like making them, but I know I made some in my early days creating children's picture books, and I just put this video together just to help you not make the same mistakes that I made. So the first one was putting it off. If I tell you a little bit about myself, at the time when I started doing my picture books, I was working, doing a night shift working in a store as a shelf stacker. So my occupation was far from the kind of person who would sit down and create and write a children's picture book. And because of that, I kept thinking I needed permission to do it. As if I needed somebody to say, you know something, Barry, you should really do this, you should really go for it. And another thing too was I don't know what your level of English is. Mine's okay, but the thought of actually sitting down and writing any kind of book was just the furthest thing from what I thought I was able to do. And also thinking that I had to have it perfect the first time out the gate. Thinking that the first book I did needed to be perfect. We all know that none of those things happen. Even if we take the subject of the iPod, how many generations have we seen of that? The first generation of those machines were, compared to what they are now. But if I had it taught that way, I would have never actually, created my first book. And then I was also worried about other people thought about me. What if I got a bad review? What if somebody slated the book that I made? How could I take it? And because of that thinking and no confidence in myself, I put off the thought of doing a children's picture book for a long time. And that was the first mistake I made. The second mistake I made was that thinking that spending money on my book would make it successful. I thought at the time that the more money I spent on my book, the more successful I could make it. So starting off, I assumed that I needed to create a children's book, I was going to need an illustrator. And then if you've noticed, and if you've seen my previous video about finding images, you know that I made the mistake of going down the route of getting images of Shutterstock, which are very expensive at the time. And I found that the story I had in mind, that sometimes I couldn't find the images to go with the story. So what I used to do was I used to find a collection of images that were all done by the same artist, and I used to put the images down and actually try and come up with a storyline that would actually fit the images, rather than creating a story and finding the images to go with it. I'd actually done the reverse. But unfortunately, going down that route and going through image sites like Shutterstock and buying images was just far too expensive. So it was something I couldn't do in my early days. I could do one or two books, but the expenses was just going higher and higher. But I thought that to create a good, successful children's book, I needed to spend a lot of money on it. So from that expense and the lack of finding unique images that I could use in my books, I went and hired an illustrator on Upwork.com. Now, if you don't know what Upwork.com is, it's a site where loads of freelancers you can hire them, freelancers offer their services. So you can find writers, illustrators, any kind of occupation you might be looking for, and so you can hire somebody to do the work for you. So at the time I thought that if I got an illustrator of my own, I could create unique images and I could create a book that I could be proud of and that will really do well. So if I just take a moment, I'm just going to show you an actual book that I created with an illustrator. This was a book called Oisín and the Tooth Fairy. This was based on my son Oisín. And I hired an illustrator of Upwork to create images for this book. So at the time, I really thought that this book was going to do really, really well. Sadly, for the expense that I paid on it by hiring the illustrator, even though she had created beautiful images and, put together a really great book, for whatever reason, it just didn't click with the market and it tanked. And I give the analogy of if you imagine a stone sinking in the ocean, tied to an even bigger stone, That was basically how fast my book went down in the Amazon charts and just totally disappeared. Now, to be fair, I still think it's a great looking book, but that was another reason that I had made the mistake of thinking that the more money I spent on the book, the more successful it would be. So I just want to let you know that sometimes that isn't always the case. The third mistake I made was being too attached to my work. As a creator, you're going to find yourself becoming too attached to what you create. As they say, no one sets out to create a bad film, but how many bad films have we seen in our lifetime? And as a creator of, when you put something together and you put your heart into it, it can be very demoralizing when what you put out there isn't accepted in the marketplace, or if you get bad reviews on it. Sometimes you have to actually stand back from those reviews and accept them, that those reviews aren't actually a personal attack on you, but are actually are based on the work that the person's seen on the book rather than you. Because even if you go to on the Amazon website and even just type in the Harry Potter series, you'll find, even though it's been a really, really popular book series, you'll still find a lot of people that will slate it off and give it low reviews and say that it was no good. So in my situation, if the book done well and it was riding high in the charts, I was really on a high, but when it didn't, I just felt crushed. I just had the impression that why couldn't other people see how good it was, if they knew how much effort I'd put into getting the illustrations made and the storyline and putting it all together. Why couldn't they see how good a book it was? So that's another mistake I'd made, was being too attached to my work and thinking that every negative result that the book got was a personal attack on myself. It's not. You just need to step back from the work and accept that not everybody's going to like your work. Some people will, some people won't. But look at it this way, you'd rather sell to the people who do like your work. You're not selling to the people who don't like your work. And my fourth biggest mistake was not thinking of my books like a publishing business would. I created books and I'd create a book and then move on to the next one, but if it was successful, at the time I never actually thought of creating a sequel to it. If you think along the lines of the children's book series, The Mr. Men, how many books are in that series? Now, I don't know if it was Sylvester Stallone that coined the sequels in the movie business, but when you can see the repeat audiences he got back to movies like all the Rocky films and all the Rambo films, you can see that if a book is successful, you should go and create a sequel to it. At the time I'd never even entered in my head. I just moved on to the next project and just created another book that was unlike the last one. Another thing I should have watched too, if I had been thinking of my business like a publishing business, was to watch my expenses. In the early stages, I spent a lot of money getting images from websites like Shutterstock and then hiring illustrators. But when you consider it, it wasn't a good investment, the illustrations I got for the Oisin's book there, I think I spent over maybe $150, maybe $200 to get those images created. But because the book had tanked, I'd say maybe I only took back maybe $20, $30 at most. So if you think of each book in the sense of profit and loss, the reason why I'm going down the route and why I'm promoting this route of creating picture books low cost, and in some cases even at free, is to lower your cost on your side and to try and to reap as much profit from your book. If a book was free, okay, maybe if it didn't sell well, but it made $100 over its lifetime, that book cost you nothing. You made $100 on it. But if you spend $200 creating a book like I did, and then you only made $20 or $30 from sales, you can see that any business couldn't keep running like that for long. If you're serious about your books, you need to take them like a publishing business would. And my fifth mistake made was that I didn't follow up on my customers. I didn't collect the customer contact details. I didn't set up a system to collect email addresses so I could keep in contact with my customers. As the saying goes, it's easy to sell to a customer than it is it's easy to sell to a customer, like a past customer, than to go out and find a new customer. I never done that at the time. I just sold a book and then moved on, then looking for another fresh customer, instead of actually collecting all my customer contact details so I can contact them again when my next book came out, so I could have repeat sales. You know, if you think of it like Amazon does, when they produced the Kindle Fire tablets, they sold them at a loss. And the reason they sold them at a loss was because once somebody bought a Kindle Fire, Amazon had a way to contact that customer over and over again, either through the ads that are on the main screen when you switch it on, or with the small pictures beneath the books that are recommending other books to you. So you need to think like Amazon does. How can you sell to those people? How can you keep in contact with those customers and sell to them over and over again? Because like your customer list is your biggest asset. You know, if you're reselling to your customers over and over again, you know, man, no matter what happens, you know, if you had 100 customers and you produce one book and you're making $1 on each book, you know, that's $100 you're making each month. If you had 1,000 customers you could contact every month, that's $1,000. And that's only just at a $1, you know, at a rate of $1 per customer. So that's another thing, the mistake that I made, wasn't following up on my customers and collecting them so I could keep in contact with them and that I could sell to them over and over again. So in closing of this video, I just want to summarize. So first of all, don't put off this book business any longer than you have to. Have confidence in yourself. Like I said myself, I was just a shelf stacker working in a supermarket at night shift. I was the furthest thing from somebody who was going to create picture books. And yet I did it. So just have confidence in yourself. I can say it because I've done it also. You know, I've done it. And then watch your expenses. Be ruthless with your books. If the marketplace tells you something, listen to it. You know, if your book you create isn't getting good reviews, you know, not every book is going to get 100% good reviews. You're going to get, you know, you're going to get a portion of people who are just going to leave a negative review for whatever reason. Just the book didn't suit them. But if you find that you're actually getting more negative reviews than positive reviews, well then that's the marketplace telling you there's something wrong. So what you should do then is actually read through those reviews, take on the advice that the people are giving you, and put it into your next book. And then sales too as well. Again, with the subject of sequels and ideas, you know, a low selling book means the market didn't think that, you know, wasn't interested in what you had for sale. That doesn't mean that your next book won't be successful. I've had books like the Oshin book that just disappeared. Then I've had other books which I thought, you know, weren't going to be as successful, and I didn't have much faith in, and they sold maybe 10 times as many as the ones I did believe in. So sometimes we're our own worst judges when it comes to what the marketplace actually likes. Sometimes you might be surprised. You might have two books. You might have one book you assume is going to do really, really well, and it just doesn't sell much at all. And then you have another book that you have much faith in, and you're just surprised that it just skyrockets. And then the idea of sequels. If you do find a book like that that does really well, is there any way you can actually create a sequel or a spin-off, or some other, use the same character on a different storyline, or find some way of tagging another book onto it and see if you can run like a collection, like the Mr. Men books, you know, with a general team, general characters that could sell to them over and over again. And then do you want to build a business, or is it going to be a vanity project? I have nothing wrong with somebody who wants to create maybe just the odd book, maybe for their kids, or, you know, just wants the idea that there is a book out there and there's kids reading your book all over the world, it's a wonderful feeling to think that, you know, somebody on the other side of the world could turn on a Kindle and download your book and could be reading your words and admiring your pictures, you know, somewhere else. And, you know, it's a nice feeling. And if that's what you want to do, that's okay. But if you're going to build a business, you're going to need You're going to need to be ruthless